The thing in the lake wears my girlfriend's face. It didn't start that way, of course. It never does. It started with a long drive, with the city shrinking in the rearview mirror and a sense of fragile hope between us. My girlfriend, Lyra, and I had been through a difficult year. A shadow had fallen over us, and no matter how fast we ran, we couldn't seem to outrun it. So we sought refuge. A cabin, nestled by a lake so remote it didn't seem to have a name. The online listing called it a perfect escape. When we arrived, the air was clean and sharp with the scent of pine. The cabin was rustic, simple, exactly what we needed. And then there was the lake. The water was like black glass, perfectly still, swallowing the light and reflecting the bruised purple and orange of the sunset. It was beautiful, but its silence was a living thing. It felt ancient and watchful. Lyra, however, seemed to exhale for the first time in months. She smiled, a real smile that reached her tired blue eyes. "It's perfect, Corvin," she whispered, her hand finding mine. And in that moment, I believed it. I believed the clean water and quiet trees could wash away the grief that clung to us. The first 2 days were a blissful lie. We hiked, we talked, we sat by the fire, letting the silence heal us. But on the third morning, I found the first crack in the illusion. I went onto the wooden porch with 2 mugs of coffee and stopped. There, leading from the steps to the edge of the porch facing the lake, were 2 small, wet footprints. They were bare, perfectly formed, as if someone had just stepped out of the water and stood there for a moment before vanishing. I looked at the sky. There had been no rain. The morning grass was damp with dew, but not soaked. I called out for Lyra. She answered from the shower. My heart did a strange, stuttering beat. I told myself it was condensation, a weird trick of the morning damp. I mopped up the prints with a paper towel and forced myself to forget. That night, I was woken by a sound. A soft, rhythmic sound that filtered through the closed window. Crying. It was the unmistakable sound of a woman weeping, a heartbroken, exhausted sob. I sat up, my skin prickling with cold. I looked over at Lyra. She was fast asleep, breathing deeply, a picture of peace. I crept to the window and peered out into the moon-drenched darkness. There was nothing there. Just the skeletal trees and the great, dark eye of the lake. The sound had stopped. The wind, I whispered to myself. Just the wind in the pines. But it didn't sound like the wind. Lyra began to change. It was subtle at first. She became quiet, withdrawn. She would spend hours just sitting on the small, rickety dock, staring down into the dark water. Her energy seemed to drain away, leaving her pale and listless. One afternoon, I found her standing at the water's edge, her toes nearly touching the surface. "It's so quiet down there," she said, her voice sounding distant, dreamy. "So peaceful." I gently pulled her back towards the cabin. Her skin felt unnaturally cold. The first time I saw it, I thought my mind was finally breaking. I was in the kitchen, making lunch. I glanced out the window that overlooked the lake and saw Lyra, standing at the very end of the dock, her back to me. She was wearing the white sundress she'd worn on the day we arrived. "Lyra, lunch is ready," I called. She didn't move. Annoyed, I turned to go outside and get her. As I walked towards the front door, I passed our bedroom. The door was ajar, and lying in bed, tangled in the sheets, was Lyra, asleep. A cold that had nothing to do with the weather washed over me. My blood turned to ice water. I backed away from the bedroom door, my eyes locked on her sleeping form. Then, with a tremor I couldn't control, I forced myself to look back out the kitchen window. The dock was empty. The figure in the white dress was gone. I didn't tell Lyra. How could I? I told myself I was exhausted, that grief was making me see things. But 2 nights later, the illusion was shattered for good. We were sitting on the sofa, a blanket over our laps. Lyra was dozing, her head on my shoulder. My gaze drifted to the large window. And there, standing just at the edge of the tree line where the forest met the shore, was the figure. It was her. It was Lyra. The moonlight was bright enough to see her clearly. The same face, the same long blonde hair, the same white dress. But this time, I saw more. The dress was dark at the hem, soaking wet. Her hair was plastered to her scalp, dripping. She just stood there, perfectly still, watching the cabin. Watching us. My breath caught in my throat. I could feel the real Lyra's soft breathing against my neck, a warm, living presence. And out there, in the cold moonlight, was her imitation. A thing made of lake water and sorrow. Fear is a physical thing. It's a pressure in your chest, a metallic taste in your mouth. I wanted to scream, to grab Lyra and run, but I was frozen. The thing at the tree line slowly lifted a hand and beckoned to me. A single, graceful, silent invitation. I shut my eyes tight, and when I opened them again, it was gone. The next day, I knew we had to leave. Lyra was weaker than ever, her skin pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She barely spoke. I started packing our bags, my hands shaking. "What are you doing, Corvin?" she asked, her voice a hollow shell. "We're going home, Lie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This place, it's not good for us." She didn't protest. She just nodded slowly and went to sit on the porch, facing the lake. That's when I found the journal. It was tucked in the back of a dusty drawer, beneath some old placemats. It was a small, leather-bound book, warped and stained by water damage. The ink was faded, but legible. It was dated 50 years prior. The entries were from a man whose wife, Elspeth, had grown despondent after the loss of their young son in a drowning accident in the lake. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read. He wrote about his wife becoming distant, cold, about finding wet footprints on the porch, about hearing crying on the wind. Then, his entries turned frantic. He wrote about seeing Elspeth down by the water, only to find her sleeping inside the cabin. He thought he was losing his mind. The last entry was written in a desperate, jagged scrawl. "It wears her face now. It stands outside the window and watches me hold my wife. My Elspeth is so cold, so weak. The thing at the window has her eyes, but they are empty. It wants in. It whispers my name. I don't think we will be leaving. The lake keeps what it takes." I slammed the journal shut. I ran to the porch and grabbed Lyra's arm. Her skin was like ice. "We're leaving. Now." She looked up at me, her blue eyes looking faded, confused. "But it's so peaceful," she murmured. I practically dragged her to the car, her feet stumbling on the gravel path. I threw our bags in the back and bundled her into the passenger seat. I ran around to the driver's side, my keys clutched in my fist. And it was there, blocking my way. Standing between me and the car door was the copy of Lyra. It was inches from me. I could see every detail. The way the lake water dripped from the ends of her hair, the faint blue tint to her skin, like someone who had been submerged for a long time. It was a perfect replica, but utterly, horribly wrong. It smiled at me. A slow, slight curve of the lips that held no warmth, no life. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. It raised a dripping hand and reached for my face. A primal surge of adrenaline hit me. I didn't think. I reacted. I lunged, shoving past it. My shoulder made contact, and it was like pushing through a wall of freezing, heavy water. A gasp of frigid air hit my lungs. I scrambled into the driver's seat, jamming the key into the ignition, my hands fumbling. The engine roared to life. The thing's face appeared at my window. The smile was gone. Its face was pressed against the glass, contorting into a silent, gaping scream of pure rage. Water and condensation streamed down the pane, obscuring the horrific image. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning on the gravel, and then swung the wheel, flooring the accelerator. We shot down the dirt road, branches scraping against the sides of the car. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. But in the passenger seat, the real Lyra, my Lyra, finally let out a choked sob. We drove for hours, not stopping until the sun was high in the sky and the woods had given way to highways and noise. The color slowly returned to Lyra's cheeks. The further we got from that lake, the more she became herself again. We never spoke of what happened. There were no words for it. We're back in the city now. The memory of that place feels like a fever dream. But sometimes, when it's raining, I'll walk past a deep puddle on the sidewalk. And for just a fraction of a second, I'll see a reflection in the murky water. It's not my own. It's the face of the thing from the lake, its features clear, its empty eyes staring up at me. The lake is 100 miles away. But it remembers me. It keeps what it takes. And I think a part of it is waiting for me in every reflection, in every drop of water. Waiting for me to come back.